Welcome to Dreamframer Photography, guys. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a sunset photo. If you check the photo gallery on my website, which is linked in the description of this video, or if you click on the card that showed up now, you will notice that I have quite a few sunset images. What if I told you that not all of those sunsets are real? If you have a landscape image that looks kind of boring, you might consider turning it into a sunset image to make it more interesting. That's what we're gonna do with this image today to make it look like this. Now, before we jump into the tutorial, just one more thing. If you like photography in Photoshop, and especially if you were planning on selling photos online, I created the most detailed guide on YouTube on how to do it. So subscribe if you still haven't, like this video, and ask me any questions in the comment section below. Now let's work on our image. This is the image we're gonna be working on. Let's say we want to turn this image into a sunset image. First of all, as usual, I'm gonna copy the background layer and create a new layer on top of it. Then I have to add a gradient layer, one of the adjustment layers. So I'm gonna click here, go to gradient and click on it. Now, you might not get the same result as I did because it really depends on the gradient that your Photoshop used the last time. In any case, however your image looks like, you're gonna edit it later, so don't worry about it now. When we add a gradient, we have to change the style of the gradient. We don't need a linear gradient. We need a radial one. And then you can just grab it with your mouse, drag it around, and put your sun wherever you want it to be. Usually you want to put it on the lightest spot in the sky. So let's say we want to put it here. Now we have to edit the gradient. So click on this little box and this dialog will open, and now we're going to change the colors for our gradient. To change the colors, you have to click one of those sliders on the left and the right side. You can also add some sliders by clicking here along this bar, but we're gonna do that later. First of all, let's change the color of this central part of the gradient. So when you click on this slider, you have to go to the color box here, click on it and choose white. Okay, now we're gonna go to the right slider, click on it, click on the color box and choose 50% gray. So when you click on this right slider, click on the color box and type 128 for red, 128 for green, and 128 for blue channel. RGB stands for red, green, and blue channel. When you do that, you will notice that this little circle is placed exactly on the left edge of the color picker and exactly in the middle, which means we chose 50% gray. Now, we have just a simple white to gray gradient. However, we want to add some warmth. We want to add the sun as well. So to do that, we have to add another point over here. Just click on it and the new point will be added. So between these two sliders, these two white sliders, that's where our sun is gonna be, in the center of the gradient, okay? Now we have to add some warmth to our gradient. So let's say we wanna click here to add another point and change the color of that slider to something yellowish. You see that here? So this white part that you see on the image, let me just move this. So this white part is actually the area, the region between the first and the second slider. That's the sun. And then from the second slider to the third slider, we have this yellow gradient. Okay? Let's leave it like this for a moment. Let's add another point over here, for example, and click on the color box and choose something more orange, or maybe even closer to red, like this. Okay? Now, when you do all this, you can change the size of the region between any of the two sliders. So let's say we want to make our sun smaller. For that to happen, I have to decrease the distance between these two white sliders, and then we can adjust other areas as well to expand this warmth a little bit. For example, something like this I think works nice. Okay. Now, while this box is open, you can still grab your gradient and move it around if you want to change the position of the sun. Anyway, I think it works the best where we placed it the first time. This obviously still doesn't look natural, but don't worry about it. We're gonna fix that right now. So I'm gonna click OK. And to make this image look more natural, you have to have your top layer active and then change its blend mode from normal to hard light. So look now at the image. Do you see the change? Now it looks much more natural than before, right? It's still not the end, okay? We're gonna tweak it a little bit to look more natural. When you change the mode from normal to hard light, you can still go and edit your gradient. For that to happen, just double click here and repeat the process. Move around the sliders, experiment, add more colors if you want to, change the size of the regions. Let's say we want to add more of the orange for this slider, like this. Maybe even more, like closer to red, okay? This yellow I actually like, so I think I'm just gonna keep it. Yeah, that's good. And let's make the sun a bit smaller, like this. So play with your gradient, move these sliders left and right. Maybe you want to add some more dramatic colors. For now and for this tutorial, I think this looks good enough. Okay. Now you can change the angle, you can play with an angle of the gradient. You can also change the scale, the size of it, right? That's the box just right under the angle over here. So this is obviously too much. Maybe something like this. Yeah, you can also play with this and see what works best. I'm gonna click OK. We are almost there. We have to add some highlights over here. You see those treetops? They're kind of yellowish. So we're gonna play with that and make them more yellow, because if you have the sun over here, those treetops would be probably lighter. For this to happen, we have to add another adjustment layer. So let me first click on this layer here, because we have to change the colors on that layer, right? Not on our gradient layer. So click here and add hue saturation layer. In this box over here, you can choose to work on a master channel, which is all colors, or separately reds, yellows, greens, cyans, and so on. We're gonna work in yellows. Even though the trees are green in the nature, these treetops are kind of yellowish, so we have to work with yellows. To prove you that, I'm gonna click on greens first and then try to increase the saturation. Look what's gonna happen on the image. So these parts are actually oversaturated now, and we don't need that, right? So let's reset green to 0 and then try yellows. I'm gonna oversaturate them. You see that? Now we increase the saturation for yellow, and our treetops are actually more yellow than green, even though the trees are green in the nature. So this is what we need. I'm gonna decrease it a little bit because that was too much. You never want to add too much of it. You can also change the lightness of those yellow tones, but then the image might look washed out. So I would usually keep this slider to 0 and just increase the saturation. I think this looks good. Now, we still need to add some warmth to the clouds, because it's sunset, right? If you have the sun placed like this, then some parts of the clouds will be orange or pinkish. For that to happen, I'm gonna click on our layer with the image and add a new empty layer. Then I'm gonna go to the brush tool and paint over the clouds with some orange color. First I'm gonna click on the color picker and choose something like this. So I just clicked on the color picker and chose a different color. It was white before. You can choose any color that you think is appropriate for the image. Now if I start painting, you're gonna see that it doesn't really look good, right? So we don't want this. To fix it, we have to change the blending mode for this layer from normal to, let's say, soft light. Now it looks much better. Let's turn it off so you can see the change. This is before, and this is after. You can also try overlay instead of soft light to create more dramatic effect, but sometimes that doesn't work, like here for example. So I'm gonna click on the eraser tool and increase the size of the eraser and just delete that. Now I can go back to my brush tool and paint more. So this is overlay mode and I don't really find it very natural looking, so I think I'm gonna go back to the soft light. Yeah, that looks better. Much nicer. You can add any kind of tones you want. So this was one way to simulate a sunset image. So let's see how the image looked in the beginning. I'm gonna turn off the visibility for all these layers above the original layer. So this is the original image. And then we added the sun and the warmth. That was all for today, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you did, press that like button. See you soon. Bye.